Most people think sex is about bodies, being a man or a woman, or what people do in private. Alenka Zupančič says sex is a deep problem about reality itself. It is like a crack, a missing piece, or a contradiction at the very center of everything. Lacan said there is no sexual relationship. Most people think this is a sad statement about how love always fails. But Subhansik says it is actually good news. The fact that there is no natural, pre written way for men and women to fit together perfectly is exactly what creates space for everything human: love, friendship, society, language, and even our deepest desires. Sex is the name for this basic impossibility that keeps everything moving. The book fights against two common mistakes. One is reducing sex to gender, which just describes different identities in a neutral, safe way. The other is treating sex like a small personal issue that doesn't matter for philosophy. Supansik says sex matters for the study of being itself. The human subject, the I that thinks and desires, is not an illusion we should get rid of. Instead, the subject is the very place where reality's hidden contradiction comes visible. The first chapter, The Strange Problem of Sex, asks, what is sex? Even modern therapists often avoid this topic. They treat sex as a defense against more important issues. But the real shock of Freud's theory is not that sex is dirty, it is that sex is deeply connected to thinking and to the unconscious mind. Freud made a key distinction. There is drive sexuality, which babies and children have. This kind is scattered, messy, and finds pleasure in many places, like sucking, looking, and touching. Then there is instinctual sexuality, which is hormonal, reproductive, and appears at puberty. The strange thing is that the messy, early drive sexuality actually comes first. This denatured drive is what makes human sexuality truly sexual. Three ideas stand out. First, what makes a pleasure sexual is not the body part. It is the connection to the unconscious and to the confusing messages children get from adults. Sexuality is built into the unconscious from the very beginning. Second, look at Christian art. You see many images of severed breasts and gouged out eyes. Christianity celebrates these strange partial bodily pleasures while pushing aside actual sex between two people. This suggests that the truly disturbing thing is not perversion, but the very idea of complete sexual relationship. Third, animals do not have a problem with sex. They do not know that they do not know. But humans, through the unconscious, know that they do not know. This lack is not empty, it is the engine of all knowledge, fantasy, and culture. Adam and Eve felt shame after eating the fruit, but they were not ashamed of being naked. They were ashamed because their naked bodies failed to show or guarantee the missing sexual relationship. Chapter 2, The Problem of Connection, argues that the idea that there is no sexual relationship is a positive condition, not a negative failure. The fact that a perfect connection does not actually exist shapes all the connections we do have. Subansik uses a funny story by the Russian writer Platonov called the anti-sexes. In the story, a company invents a machine that promises to solve all sexual problems. The machine would give you pure sexual pleasure whenever you want without needing another person. At the same time, it would remove sex from your friendships so you could have pure spiritual relationships. This fantasy fails because pleasure and other people are stuck together. You cannot have one without the other. Subansik applies this logic to politics and money. Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market is a perfect fantasy. It says if everyone just follows their own selfish interests, the result will be good for everyone. But this is a story that actually uses the lack of connection to benefit the rich. The real result is not fairness for all, but an ugly surplus of wealth that only goes to a few. The author wittily calls this the invisible hand job of the market. Following Marx, she argues that the working class is not just one group among others, it is the living point of contradiction within capitalism. The system needs this gap to make profit, but it also denies that the gap exists. Chapter 3, The Real Difference, is the most important chapter. Sexual difference is a unique kind of difference. It is not like the difference between a cat and a dog. You cannot reduce it to two opposite identities, man and woman. She criticizes modern gender theory because it turns sexual difference into a stable, comfortable set of categories. It removes the sex from sex, that is, it removes the scandal, the trouble, and the contradiction. Freud suggested something much stranger. He hinted that if there were pure masculinity and pure femininity, they would actually be the same. Both would be masculine. So, where does real difference come from? It comes from the fact that one is missing. There is no single word or sign that can complete or ground the sexual relationship. This missing one is what splits reality from the inside. Lacan created logical formulas for this. On the masculine side, there is an exception, the idea of one primal father who escapes the rule. This exception allows men to define themselves as an all. On the feminine side, there is no such exception. This is why Lacan says woman does not exist. There is no universal category called woman. A woman is not all. Her being includes a different, extra kind of pleasure beyond the usual rules. A woman does not have a deep, true femininity underneath her mask. The mask is all there is. Masculinity, in contrast, is a matter of belief in the symbol of power. The subject is born in this gap between pretending and believing. The final chapter tackles the hardest idea, the Lacanian real. For Lacan, science does not discover a pre existing great outside. Instead, it creates a new kind of reality where its own words have real effects, like landing on the moon. The real is not a hidden substance, it is what makes a hole in our systems of knowledge. It is the point where logic breaks down. The death drive is usually misunderstood as a desire to die, but the death drive is the stubborn, ghost like repetition of an extra pleasure that gets stuck in the body. It is the drive to repeat the gap, the crack, the nothingness at the heart of being. It is the strange ability to die differently from how an animal dies. Subansik concludes the book with the image of the navel, the belly button. Adam was created from dust, so he had no mother. Should he have a belly button? It is a scar from a birth that never happened. Freud also talked about the navel of the dream, the point where interpretation hits a wall and cannot go further. Sexuality is exactly this navel. It is the point where being is incomplete, where knowledge fails, and yet where the unconscious keeps on thinking. The task is not to cover up this gap with fantasies or comfortable identities. The task is to find the words that work, new words that allow us to live creatively within this permanent, productive emptiness.